Hey y'all, and welcome back. You may know me as YV Edit on here as well as on TikTok. And I'm having wisdom teeth surgery this morning, so I figured I would share one of my TikTok playlists with y'all. And this playlist has all the videos I've ever done about the idea of 50-50 when it comes to dating and marriage and everything like that. Just a quick note, these are sped up because that's how I do my TikToks. And if you'd like to listen back in regular speed, just set your YouTube speed to 0.75 and that should fix it. Enjoy. This post should be required reading for all women, but especially if you've got a man trying to convince you to go into a 50-50 type situation. This is a great example of why things are never truly 50-50 for you as a woman. Now, this post went viral a few years ago, so you may have seen it around. I just remember being so proud of this woman when I read it. I remember being so excited for the future, because I was like, if women really start thinking like this, we might be able to see some changes. The post is written by the man in the situation, so it's all from his point of view and from his perspective. Like, the kind of punchline is, my wife wants me to pay her almost $50,000 to have her child. Here's the problem. She's not actually his wife. They're not legally married, so they're common law. He's trying to have a child with a woman that he's not willing to go to the courthouse with and sign some papers with. They're spiritually married, whatever that means. And they've apparently decided to split all their expenses 50-50. So they paid 50-50 for the honeymoon, they paid 50-50 for the wedding, their house. The only thing that he paid for was their wedding rings and her engagement ring. And honestly, it seems like they have a pretty good system set up. Like, I don't even mind this, because at that point, like, you're making so much money that your basic needs are taken care of. Like, everything's great. I'm actually not against this split right here, because past a certain point, it just doesn't matter. Like, you're rich, you have money to cover basic necessities, you have money to cover emergencies, you have your own fun money, he has his own fun money. I don't really care. That's not the part that bothers me. Love that he's attracted to her independence, like, love that this made sense for them, totally fine. At some point, they decide to have a kid. It might be time to start trying and, let's get off birth control and just kind of let it happen. Now, it heats up a little when he comes home one day and she's on the phone and she, is acting kind of weird about it. And then later that night, she says that they need to have a serious talk. And he says that's when she laid out all the financials. This is what warms my heart, right here. This is a woman that knows her worth and she knows what she's about to do. She lays it all out. Basically, I'm gonna have to take unpaid time off work. There may be unexpected hospital and emergency bills. And since I'm doing this for us to start a family, and we've been doing everything 50-50 up until now, then I'm gonna need you to compensate me, because this childbirth and this having a child is gonna hit me a lot harder than it hits you. You're not gonna be losing any of your income. You might think, oh, well, but he's gonna, sustain her, he's gonna provide for her. That's not how things have been. She has no reason to think that. They have only split things 50-50 for the entirety of their relationship. She has no reason to think that he's gonna help her out in any way, shape, or form once she takes this big hit. And she is realizing that these are some things that she hasn't thought about, when it comes to having a kid with a man who doesn't have to do half of that. And so she's realizing now that the whole 50-50 thing gets a little complicated here. It gets a little hairy once you start bringing a kid into it, because that's entirely on the woman. The man gets to do the funnest part of it, and then he's done. So she's picking up on that, and she's letting her concerns be known. And he even says, I see the logic in that, but I'm really very turned off by this, because she's essentially asking me to pay her to have our child. It's like, you were fine with 50-50 up until now. You were fine with 50-50 when it meant you get to have your fun money. You were fine with 50-50 when it meant that she was a career woman and she was bringing in all this money. And now that you want a family, now that you want her to do that part, now you don't want to go 50-50. Now all of a sudden it's a turnoff. Now all of a sudden it's unfair. Why? Like, you're expecting a career woman to do housewife shit. She's not a housewife. She's not even your wife. Why would she be doing all of this for free? It's one thing if you go the old-fashioned way, and lots of people are okay with that arrangement, where the man works, is hopefully a high earner, the wife gets to spend that money, she gets to spend that money on herself, and so therefore that 50 to 100,000 K is spread out over the course of her life. Like, that's, you gotta think, like, that's that payment. That's why a lot of women who are like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm okay with it because I'm provided for. I don't have to go to work in order to afford the things that I need, and in order to feel like I'm, set up for and provided for. And that's an arrangement that works for a lot of people, but apparently they didn't want that. He didn't want that. He didn't want to provide for her so that she will one day have his child for him without all of this sort of muddying the waters. But since they decided to go so clean and it was really all 50-50, that's what made the comparison so stark. Like, she's really thinking, like, I'm about to go through this whole thing, and then I can't even go back to work, and then my work won't cover this. I have to worry about paying out of pocket for things. How is this 50-50? And then he's going to talk about how she saw my hesitation and just doubled down. Of course she doubled down, because it was all perfectly clear to you when you wanted to go 50-50, when you wanted to keep your own finances, when you didn't want to lose, your money spending it on her or whatever. And of course she doubled down, because that really shows how greedy you are. It shows what you were really in it for all along. And then you wanted her to go 50-50 when it was nice and convenient for you, but when it wasn't convenient for you, now it's a turnoff. Now you're confused. Now you don't know why she wants to do that. Well, why did you want to go 50-50 with her all those years? You didn't want to spend your money. You didn't want to invest in another person like that monetarily. You wanted to go 50-50. And now she's seeing that that's like all the way true. Like, you really didn't want to invest in her at all. That's why she doesn't have a marriage certificate. That's why she has nothing legal and binding to you. That's why y'all are in a spiritual marriage. This is why it's important to talk about, because a lot of men will be really turned off when you try to stand up for yourself, and when you try to get yours, and when you try to really go 50-50. And in my opinion, she had a very reasonable plan. Like, her work was going to pay her some of it, you know, and why should she have to take the financial hit? If everything was 50-50 up until now, and it's going to be half his baby. And she's not even charging him for everything that could go wrong during pregnancy, all the discomfort that she's going to feel during pregnancy. Like, that's just her cross to bear. She is only asking for the financial compensation. And she had notes, like, she came with binders, she came with receipts, like, she started talking about how she's going to do the housework split, like, everything. She had a plan for everything. And now that 50-50 doesn't benefit this man, now he's upset and now he's turned off. In fact, he's shocked. Like, he doesn't know how to process it. He doesn't even understand, like, you know, where she's coming from. Even though earlier he said it made sense to him logically, but he's still shocked. Says the idea of having a payment plan to have a child is just gross. He says that lots of couples can do this without, you know, paying for it, but he also acknowledges that those couples are typically married. So they don't have the same sort of setup, like their finances are legitimately separate. So of course it would make sense for her to be like, well, I don't want to be broke for 6 months to a year raising our child. Like, why would I do that? She's like, I'm just asking you to provide me the money that I would normally have. That a 50-50 pregnancy and birth was an option, I'm sure she'd love to go for that, but it's not. So how do you make that 50-50? Well, she just gave him a suggestion and he's really turned off by it. Really doesn't like it, really not into it. This is why I say watch out for 50-50 men, because this is where it ends up. This is exactly where it ends up. And good for her that she was smart enough and like thinking ahead enough to even think about this, because a lot of women just assume that having a child with a man means a lot more than it actually does. And that man did not go through pregnancy. He did not go through childbirth. He does not have the same connection with that child. He did not lose as much as you did from carrying and birthing that child. You lost certain bodily functions. You lost certain bodily abilities. You lost your abled body for several months. He didn't have to experience any of that. So to him, it's just like, it's not a big deal. And, you know, since they didn't want a marriage certificate and, you know, they didn't get married, she wants this plan to be legally binding, which again, also makes a lot of sense. A lot of men are all about, you know, signing a prenup and doing all that when it benefits them. But when a woman wants to sign a legally binding document that you're going to compensate her 50-50 for having your 50-50 child, that child is yours. It's half yours. So if you want to have it, you should have to pay for it, because she's never asked you to pay for anything else in her life. What's the problem? I thought y'all were 50-50. You didn't think it was going to be like that when it came to a child? Why not? It's sexy and attractive and confident that she's so independent at work and that she earns her own money and that she makes her own, you know, pays her own bills. But as soon as she wants to bring that into motherhood, now you're not turned on by it. Now you're turned off by it. She's not just gonna, you know, take an obvious L and like just deal with it. Honestly, like when you think about it, if your finances really are that separate, like what is her plan? Like what is her alternative? I don't know. Personally, I'm obsessed with the way that she handled it. The post ends with him like he's kind of freaking out that she might be pregnant already. He's like thinking that her sister put her up to it, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who put her up to it. She's right. She's absolutely right. Because this man only wanted to go 50-50 while it was beneficial to him, and he got to have his little fun money set aside. He got to have a paid off house. He got to have, you know, didn't have to worry about spending money on anybody else. That's when it worked for him. When it came time for the 50-50 to benefit the woman, and mind you, she has like an actually really legitimate reason. Like he cannot go 50-50 with her on a childbirth and a pregnancy. He can't. So she's giving him the next best option. And all she's saying is like, if you want a kid, then this is how it has to be. Because this is how we set up our entire relationship. Why would it change now? Please watch out for these jokers, because this is literally how it's going to go. They're going to be 50-50 until it's time for the 50-50 to benefit you, not just him, until it's time for him to have some empathy and understand that you're in a different situation than him, that he can't possibly go 50-50 with you on this in any other way other than financially, because of the way that you guys have set things up. When it's time for him to lay in the bed that he made, it doesn't look so warm. Now it doesn't look so cozy, but it's the bed that he made, and she is absolutely right. So please know this, that when you have a baby with a 50-50 man, he is literally just expecting you to take on all of it. And he doesn't care about how that's not 50-50 for you. It's just a turnoff for him at the end of the day. Stay safe out there. Godspeed. It's not only that, it's that only a selfish man will even ask you to go 50-50 in the first place, because a non-selfish man will realize that 50-50 doesn't exist between men and women. The couples that are going to get even close to 50-50, in my opinion, are same-sex couples. Het relationships are not fair to women inherently from the very, very start. And any man with the tiniest shred of empathy will be able to see that first and foremost. My husband always talks about how we could never be 50-50 because he simply doesn't experience life in the same way that I do. He doesn't have to deal with a monthly period. He doesn't have to deal with a different set of hormones every day. That's something that men don't talk about. They wake up with the same hormones every single day. They're on the same 24-hour cycle. Women are not. And we don't function in a world that's built for that. So even though 9-to-5 workday was built for men, women are now expected to participate in that as well. So we exist in a different world. I exist in a world where it's scary for me to go outside alone at night, even in the daytime. I've been catcalled. I've been threatened. It's very unpleasant. And my husband does not have to ever experience that. He doesn't have to experience like even knowing how to do his makeup in order to go outside or get on camera and be taken seriously. Like he doesn't know what it's like to have that whole extra step in your routine. He doesn't know what it's like to wear clothes that are uncomfortable and nobody cares. Like he is not pressured to wear high heels to important events, even though they're uncomfortable and will make his feet hurt. Like y'all don't live in the same existence. Like y'all don't experience the same reality. It could never be 50-50. And I would encourage women to try this relationship audit, because most likely your relationship with a man is going to be lopsided. And it's going to be that way, especially if you are paying half of the bills. When we talk about 50-50, we need to understand that there's a lot more than just bills and cold hard cash involved. If you are paying 50-50 bills with a man, but he's not on birth control and you are, so that he doesn't have to use a type of protection that he doesn't like, or just simply you're on birth control because you're not ready to have a child, and for some reason society has placed that entire burden on you. Y'all may still be using other forms of contraception, but for him they're not hormonal. For him, the most typical form of contraception doesn't require taking like a pill every day, doesn't require him getting a shot or like an uncomfortable device put inside. Like, it's very different. And it's funny because men will complain that it like doesn't feel as good. Meanwhile, women typically don't even get to finish. And men literally don't care about that. If you're paying 50-50 on bills with a man, he better be doing half the chores, and not in a way of like, oh, he does half the chores, but his chores are like the once weekly or like once every few days or really whenever he feels like it. But the chores that have to get done, like dinner, dishes, cleaning, sanitizing, doing all that stuff, making sure there's food in the fridge, making sure there's like a meal plan, making sure there's snacks in the house. So when I say chores are split 50-50, I mean, he can also cook, he can also clean, I mean, he can also decorate the house, he can also throw a party, he can also write like thank you cards, he can also vacuum, mop, sweep, clothes to dry cleaning, wash bedding, vacuum the mattress, do small maintenance things around the house, wipe baseboards, scrub the bathroom, scrub the tub, bleach the shower curtain. Little things break in the house, he's also watching for that and replacing them and taking the time out of his day to go to the store. So tell me already, is your relationship lopsided or not? Can he and does he do all of those things? Or does he just choose to like live next to you while you make your collective lives happen and functional? God forbid you have kids, but did he carry and birth half of them and then y'all just slapped a baby together in the delivery room? Or did you have to do all of it? Was he awake half the night breastfeeding or bottle feeding or comforting? Did he experience what it's like for the baby to only want him? Is your relationship lopsided, or did he somehow compensate you for all of that? And if so, how? When you're talking about 50-50, how can it be 50-50 when your money wasn't even earned as easily as his most of the time? Women have to work twice as hard in the workplace. They have to prove themselves twice as much. They are way more afraid of making mistakes. They are judged way more harshly when they do. Having kids for them does not guarantee them pay raises and promotions. It actually typically hampers their work status, hampers their career a lot because they do end up taking most of the days off work because dad won't do it. Your money is not even the same. So how can anything be 50-50? Your safety is not the same. So how can anything be 50-50? There's no such thing as 50-50 between a man and a woman. Even the fact that if you're paying like 50-50 for bills and he's not considering the fact that you have to buy like feminine care products every single month out of your own pocket for the fact that you're hurting and bleeding, then how can it be 50-50? He should at least be deducting that from your bill. Yeah, sure, it's not his fault, but what are you going to do about it? If you love me, then what are you going to do about it? A man who wants to go 50-50 with you doesn't love you. He's not thinking about you. He doesn't care. He's not showing any empathy. He just cares about his own cold hard cash because he has the privilege for that to be the only thing he cares about when it comes to a relationship. And not much more is expected of him, whereas all this lopsided stuff that I just named off is absolutely expected of you. Like, you're supposed to go on birth control because it's your responsibility, you know, not to get pregnant, end up in a single mother type situation and have people tell you that you should have just chosen better. You have to do that. He doesn't have to do that. A lot of things are your responsibility. The home, food, your looks, and his looks. It's too much. In my opinion, the only type of relationship that's worth it is a 100-100 relationship where both of you try to put in the maximum amount of effort every single day towards each other with as much empathy and as much of a teamwork mindset as possible. Then that is a happy and healthy relationship. That's the only kind of relationship you want to be in, where the man is like, I will give you the world because I know that you will also give me the world. Honestly, that's just how women operate baseline. So if a man is not meeting you there, then he is not worth your time. He's literally just there to waste your time. And he's literally there to like take from you and then just be like, oh, you didn't have to do all that. All I ever wanted from you was to pay bills 50-50 with me. I don't care about home decor. I don't care about how you look. I don't care about how you've improved my life. You didn't have to do any of that. And by the way, when a man says that, when a man throws back your contributions in your face and he says you didn't have to do that, that's because he's telling you the truth about himself and about what he would do for you. The truth is, he wouldn't do any of that for you. So that's what he's saying. He's like, you really didn't have to do that because I would never do that for you. I would never put myself in any kind of harm's way, any kind of debt. I would never have a baby for you, even if I could. I would never hamper my career for you. I would never pick up after you. I won't even pick up after myself. What makes you think I would ever pick up after you? You genuinely didn't have to do any of that stuff. And that's how they'll gaslight you in the end about it. And you'll end up, genuinely and in good faith sharing 50% of your money and yourself with this man who will then look you dead in the face as you're breaking up or as you're voicing a concern to him, and he'll say, well, you didn't have to do any of that. I never asked you to do any of that. And a lot of women in my comments confirm this too, and they said that even when I was with a guy where it was supposed to be, all 50-50 and everything like that, there would be lots of times where I would pull out my card and I would pay for him, and he never ever returned that favor, and he continued to, just split everything up evenly and continued only looking out for himself in every situation. And it truly is like that. That's truly how it's going to be with the 50-50 man, because even to suggest going 50-50 with a woman when you're a man, it's an inherently selfish act. Unless that 50-50 is mitigated by all the societal circumstances that are unfair to her. That's how she's going to know that you actually love her and care about her. And men will absolutely every single time do this for the woman that they love. But I think that men should do this for all women. Like, that women should unionize and demand this kind of treatment. It shouldn't just be that you're just like this to a woman that you're head over heels in love with as a man. Like, that's not fair. If you're going to be taking up a woman's time, if you're going to be like in her life, it shouldn't be at a detriment to her. Okay? And if you really want to know if your relationship is like 50-50 as a man or as a woman, think about how many things you do for your partner. So women, think about how many things you do for your partner, and then think about how many things does he do for you, not for himself, not because, you know, there was no other option, because there was no other choice. How often is he actively thoughtful or like proactively considerate of you? How many times do you get like an unexpected treat or gift, or he covers some big expense like you would for him? You can be 50-50 and still do nice things for each other. But for some reason, a lot of women will report that whenever they were 50-50 with a man, he was all about the cold, hard cash. And there was nothing else 50-50 about that relationship. And I'm telling you, it's because men have the privilege to think this way, but you don't. So please stop thinking that way, okay? And don't let these jokers fool you. 50-50 is a scam and a lie for women. 50-50 only ever benefits men because it's not 50-50, and it never could be. Okay, so stay safe out there. I love you. This comment is totally spot on, and my Roman Empire is how 50-50 feminism set women back. Why 50-50 feminism is the reason that a lot of men would leave if the woman was no longer going 50-50 with them. Here's what I think happened. 50-50 boss girl feminism lied to everybody. But as per usual, women were left holding the bag. Like, men will often use feminism to like gaslight you into splitting bills 50-50 because it's like, well, aren't we equal now? And it's like, no, we're not equal. And that's why this 50-50 conversation continues happening. Because there's something very important that we're forgetting and as always, it's something that women do, and it's all the invisible labor. So historically, men have always been privileged in the patriarchy. As far as what's visibly recognized about them has typically consisted of ability to work, to make money, to gain respect, and to wield power. That's what really gives men such an advantage in society, right? And other than that, other than all of this visible stuff, there's really nothing a man has to do. The only thing that we've ever expected of men is to go to work, make money. That gives them both respect and power in society. Since women didn't have these things, they were typically considered underpowered and underprivileged. And men could use all of these things in order to manipulate women, in order to hold it over their head that I have money, I have power, I have privilege, I can make my own money, and you can't even step foot outside without money. And nobody respects you because you don't have a job. Now, because they didn't have power in society, women had to make concessions, and those concessions consisted largely of the invisible labor that women do. It's just considered part of being a woman. We don't really need anything here in order to consider a man a man. Unless a woman is at the bare minimum able to keep house, cook, and plans on becoming a mother, we typically don't view her as a woman to begin with. And I could add so many things to this column. Women do a lot of invisible labor in order to even be considered a woman. And so that's something we didn't think about when we said, let's make women able to go to work. Okay, so now they can go to work. When they go to work, they'll be able to get money, they'll be able to get respect, and they'll be able to get power. What we didn't think about is what's going to happen to all this invisible labor. That can't just go away overnight. Because these skills were so largely like invisible and just assumed as part of being a woman, nobody ever thought to ask, like, what's going to happen to all this? And if women are stepping into the same arena with men and working and taking on this labor, then how are they supposed to keep doing this labor? Are men going to step in and grab some of this? Are they going to cook at home? Are they going to become homemakers? Are they going to start raising the children, start taking care of the children? The answer was no. And this is why like men have trouble validating themselves too, because there's really not a lot that they can put here in the sort of identity column. They are only judged by what's visible and what's tangible. Women are now being judged on both. So that's why men ask, why don't you bring money? You go to work, right? Why aren't you bringing me money? But women are not allowed to ask, why aren't you making me food? Why aren't you cleaning up after me? Why aren't you staying home and raising the children? Why don't you take the day off to go pick up, a sick kid from school? Why do I always have to do that? You know that results in me getting less work and also a lot less money for my work. Therefore, my job is never considered as important as yours because it brings in less money because I still have to deal with all of this. And I have not been able to hand any of it off to you. But again, because this labor is invisible, it doesn't bring you respect or power, men are not interested in it. They are interested in you making money, since you now can, and you going to work. Again, because on the large, you get paid less than them, and you have less work opportunities, then you don't get any of this. You don't get any respect or power. You keep your invisible labor, you keep your full-time job, you keep your lower salary, and you don't get none of this on top of that. That's why it's not 50-50. That's why I always say 50-50 doesn't exist. Until we learn to recognize this invisible labor as something that is not inherent to women, as something that has been laid on their shoulders for no good reason, to justify being able to trap them in poor conditions without the same amount of money, without any respect, without any amount of power to wield in society. And until women are truly able to share these invisible labors and burdens with men, we will never appropriately be compensated, respected, or empowered. And that's my Roman Empire. But yeah, please go check out her videos. She's awesome. Straight from the horse's mouth, y'all. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it when men do come in the comments and confirm these things, because there are a lot of men that try to gaslight women into thinking that they should be building together and like covering bills 50-50, but it is inherently selfish of a man to ask you that. And if a man ever does ask you that, reason that it means he's not interested in you is because he knows damn well you shouldn't be paying 50-50. That's what's at the heart of it. He knows that that would be ripping you off. A man who asks to go 50-50 with you has every intention of ripping you off, one way or another, at some point or another. Because there's truly no such thing as 50-50 between a man and a woman in a fully het relationship. Especially if intimate component is included, then there's absolutely no 50-50. There's no 50-50 in sight. But it's even in all the little things. Like, for example, the reason why it's unfair to split the bill on the first date, because y'all inherently showed up unequal. If a man lacks the empathy to see that about you, then he's not interested in you as a person. He's not interested in treating you well and fairly as a person. Because that man knows damn well he did not spend an hour putting on makeup and doing his hair. So he's already not 50-50 with you, like physically. He also knows damn well that there are physical probably differences between you. He probably knows that it's inherently more dangerous for you to show up on a date with a man that you barely know, or with a man who could have lied to you over text or Tinder or whatever. Men know all this. That's why they warn their sisters about men. They warn their girl best friends about men. They'll tell their girl best friends the truth, that a man is not interested in them, and then they'll turn around and do that same exact thing to some other girl who they're not interested in and will claim that they're interested in her. It's gaslighting. That's what it's called. That man also knows damn well that if y'all were to, you know, take your relationship to the next level physically and you ended up pregnant, that would all be on you. So he knows that. He knows he's not coming into this 50-50. And if he really wanted to impress you, if he is ever planning on treating you well in the future, then he will never, ever, ever ask you to split a bill 50-50. He would never do that to a woman that he actually likes. And that is straight from the horse's mouth. And lots of men will tell you this. And the only type of men that will insist on 50-50 are men who are either A, severely lacking empathy and may have some sort of like a personality disorder associated with that, a lack of empathy. They may have never met a woman that they want to treat well, and they will keep treating women 50-50 and shitty until they find the actual woman that they want to treat well, and then a switch will flip. They'll post videos like this.
In the past, if you told me that I would be the guy buying flowers there, I would have sworn that you are a madman. But look at me now. Shame on me. Well, I guess it was never really about me not wanting to buy it, and it was not my style of love. It was just maybe about not finding the person I wanted to buy it for. That's the point I'm making. If you're not receiving flowers now from your partner and they say, oh, that's just not how I am, the you is silent. That's just not how I am for you. Okay, this guy doing too much. Sorry, guys.
All of a sudden, they'll be doing everything for this girl, and they will completely understand her. They'll empathize with her. They'll sympathize with her. They will be thoughtful towards her. They will get her random little gifts. They will send her random flowers. They will take her out to beautiful dinners. That's what's going to happen. So you may just be dealing with a man who hasn't met his dream girl. And if he's going 50-50 with you, then you're not his dream girl. He still hasn't met her. So just let him keep looking. Because you don't want to be there 5 years later when he finds her and you've been paying 50% of his bills this whole time. And then he's going to dump you. He's going to get with her, and she's going to have a ring on her finger in less than a year. And she's going to have all her bills paid. And she is going to have everything that you begged him to do. She's going to have that. So please let him find his dream girl. Leave that man alone. Or if a man insists on going 50-50 with women, like very strictly or whatever, he may have not yet found out that he's not into women. The man who naturally does not want to provide for women, or at least the woman of his dreams, or if he has just been through so many women and none of them were ever good enough for him to settle down with, and he just can't seem to find anyone that he wants to really like spoil and take care of, it may just mean that he's not into women. Because men know exactly what it is they need to do in order to be in every traditional way attractive to a woman. And they will pull out all of those stops when they meet the right woman. Either that they don't have empathy towards anybody, so they'll never treat anybody well, or it's that they're going to treat somebody well, it's just not you, or it's that their dream girl is actually not a girl. They probably resent that, and they probably resent women for being like the standard option. And they wish that they weren't, so that they wouldn't be judged for what they actually want to do. Does that make sense? In that case, a man will be extremely resentful of you and all other women, so it won't matter what woman or like how gorgeous or how amazing she is, like he will never treat her right. And he will never treat any woman right. because he doesn't like them like that. Those are your only three options. None of this is about 50-50, okay? Because that's something that men tell you exists when it really doesn't. So don't be gaslit by them. That's something they know damn well doesn't really exist. I love you. Stay safe out there. And this is really the most infuriating part. Expectations of what it takes to be a woman in a relationship have been weaponized against you in a way that hasn't caught up with the current situation that men are trying to present as something so simple. We'll just split our bills 50-50, you'll pay your share, I'll pay mine, and that way everything will be fair. The expectation for the man is that the only thing that he's going to bring to the relationship is himself. So a man rarely changes for a relationship. This is weaponized against women too, because why did you get with him if you knew he wasn't going to change? Women don't know that. Women change when they get into relationships. They change, they compromise, they improve living standards, they expect to perform emotional labor that is tailored to the person that they're with, to do research on what that emotional labor should look like. But apparently men need to be told explicitly every single thing that's going to happen in the future of your relationship in order to just simply be able to read the room. Men are not expected to bring skills to the relationship like cooking, cleaning, emotional labor, life planning. They're not expected to do whatever you like in the bedroom. They just expect to do whatever they like. They expect to continue doing things that are of interest to them. They expect to work as late as they want, to improve their future career, and they expect that their life and that their partner will coalesce around them in order to support that. And to be honest, they simply wouldn't be in a relationship otherwise. But when it comes to women saying like, oh, I don't even want to be in a relationship where the man doesn't cook, clean, do all this stuff, it's like, well, did you tell him? Well, did anybody teach him how to do that? Well, your expectations are a little bit too high. Men don't really work like that. They do respond well to being cooked for. Like, if you're not going to cook for a man, he's probably not going to like that. But also, if you want him to cook for you, he's not going to like that either. Do with that what you will, is what we tell women. And that's why 50-50 is such a farce. And that's why a lot of women say, like, well, if I'm going to be doing all of this labor, then I don't want to work. And then men will be like, gold digger. But it's like, no, you're the digger. You're digging for something because you expect to literally bring nothing to the relationship other than paying 50% of bills. And then everything that the woman does in order to make the relationship equitable in terms of other than just money, men will say you didn't have to do that. So you're just left feeling crazy because it's like, he wouldn't be with you if you weren't cooking, cleaning, showering him with attention, if you weren't working on yourself, if you were actually lazy, if you were actually a gold digger. He wouldn't date you. He would not be interested to be with you unless you brought tangible comforts and improvements to his life. But the moment that women open their mouth to ask for the same, or even just ask for the things that they're already doing just to be reciprocated, and it's like, well, you shouldn't have that expectation. It's a catch-22. It's a closed loop in which you can never do anything right. So watch out for this type of split because it's not it. That's not what you want. You need to ask yourself, what value is this man actually bringing to my life other than splitting bills 50-50? And how much have I done for him that at this point has gone completely unreciprocated and should at this point tell me for sure that this man does not care about me, and that he does not have my best interests at heart, and that he's really just looking for somebody to split bills with because it's expensive out here. And the only reason that men want these kind of relationships is because they are largely benefiting. They are being served by these relationships. And of course, they don't want to let that go. So they'll continue saying that, oh, men don't want to be with you unless you cook, clean, and do all that stuff. But I'm not going to do that stuff because nobody taught me a single household task. And I couldn't have possibly learned it on my own. What are you bringing to the table? What do you bring to the relationship? Nothing. You just want to benefit from it. And you have the nerve to open your mouth and call women gold diggers and call their expectations way too high, call their standards way too high when they're like, this isn't 50-50. You want a lot more from me than you want me to want from you. Stay safe out there, y'all. Godspeed. I get questions from listeners every once in a while. I wanted to talk about this one. This is a situation I'm sure that quite a few women have found themselves in after spending, 6 or more years with a man without commitment and without any future certainty. And this is why I say to avoid 50-50 men in the first place, because especially if you want a kid, because there's nothing 50-50 about having a kid with someone when you're a woman or when you're a man. But at least when you're a man, it benefits you. Like, you benefit from that uneven split. As a woman, you uneven split is at your expense. If you are hoping to have kids in the future, you can't start the relationship off on a 50-50 foot, because you will be bringing a lot more than 50 to the table. Also, very much matters what that 50-50 extends to. So are you 50-50 just in terms of bills? Is the household labor split evenly 50-50? Is the emotional labor split evenly 50-50? Is gift giving done on the same scale with the same amount of thoughtfulness? Is that all 50-50? Is deep cleaning done at a 50-50 rate? Is house maintenance done at a 50-50 rate? You have to consider all of that. And if a man is lagging behind in any of those areas where you are having to make up beyond half of tasks or chores or any other kind of labors like emotional labors, that means he's already lacking the bandwidth to bring a child into the situation that he's in. He's already running out of steam just with you before we even get to a whole nother person that's going to be brought in when you're having a child. And what a lot of women report is that that kind of relationship, that kind of lopsidedness is typically manageable until a child is brought in, at which point it turns rage inducing, and it turns into anger at the socially accepted lack of effort on the man's part when he becomes a father. Because when you become a mother, the whole world is laid on your shoulders. If a man is like burned out before he's even done with like stuff that an adult needs to know how to do, like if he's burned out just from like half of all cleaning when he gets home, he doesn't have enough energy for emotional labor, he doesn't have enough energy for thoughtful gift giving, he doesn't have enough energy for other thoughtful gestures, is he going to get that once a kid is there? He doesn't have it. He lacks the bandwidth. So definitely keep that in mind. For a lot of women, this turns into being a single mother while a man just exists and benefits from that labor. The second most infuriating part of that is that whenever he does do anything, and I mean anything, it will be very visible and he will be praised for it. A lot of women talk about this, that their husband will only do stuff for the baby, with the baby, comfort the baby, change the diaper, take the child to the bathroom only when they are out in public. And they literally pretend like that child does not exist at home, because men enjoy the attention that they get, and they know that they get outsized attention for doing basic care tasks for their children. As long as other people see them, then they're happy to do those tasks. But a lot of times they get home and they kick their feet up. But if you try to talk to other people about it, other women will say, well, my husband's even worse. He doesn't even do it when we're out in public. So at least you have that. And women become convinced and gaslit into staying in these like lopsided situations where they would just be better off alone. Second question you need to ask is, does this man actively want to have a child with you? Like, is this something that he wants? If he's only willing to be like a passive participant in this, if he's like, well, you want to get pregnant. I mean, I know you're talking about, getting IVF in your situation. Would he be paying for half of that? Would he be paying for all of it? Like, what's his contribution there? Because if you're paying for all of it, you're a single mom anyway. You don't obviously need a partner to procreate. These days we have different ways for that to be able to happen. There's a certain type of bank you can go to and just get any other man's genetic material. It's cheap. It's easy to get. This man is going to be like, well, you're the one who wants a baby, so you have to pay for your own IVF and all that stuff. What's the difference? What's the difference of having it with him or with somebody anonymous that you don't know? Contribution level is going to be the same. Especially if you have a baby and do all the labor of that with a passive man who tried to bring it up later, then he's always going to be able to throw it back in your face like, well, you didn't have to do that. I didn't even want a kid. You're the one who wanted a kid so bad. And so it'll always be an excuse for him to not do anything about the lopsidedness of your labor towards this child. He's always going to be able to say like, hey, you didn't have to do that. And especially since you guys are not married, you would have no legal contract, like no binding recourse or anything like that. And that's the reason. That's the reason why he doesn't want to marry you. He wants to be able to make a clean break whenever he's ready. That's what he's setting this up to be. I would say for me, that would just be a non-starter altogether. I would consider two other options instead. The first option, and I would do this either way, is to exit out of that relationship. A 6-year relationship where you are paying bills 50-50 is a roommate situation. That is not a person who's invested in you, not a person who understands the fundamental differences in your respective situations. And that's not a person who really wants to be tied to you long term. So tying yourself to that person long term with a baby seems like a non-starter to me. Honestly, getting out of like a long-term relationship like that is a superpower for women. It's the shortcut to a glow up. It's to a new and different and much better perspective. At this point, it would be really probably helpful for you to see what your life would look like without this man and consider like what was really keeping you there in the first place. If having a relationship with a man is something that you even want in the future, it sounds like what you're more after is having a child, which is very different. You don't need a partner for that. And in fact, I came across a Reddit thread this past weekend that made me think of your question. My husband is away with work and the house is so neat and clean and I'm so much less stressed and tired. You can pause to read. It's basically what you'd expect. Like, turns out that depending on a man only slows you down in life. And even though you may be working a full-time job, maybe bringing in 50-50 as far as like financially, you may be spending just as long at work as he is. The truth is, he'll never do 50-50 at home. It'll just be easier for you to do it all yourself rather than deal with the constant psychological disappointment of having a man let you down. Even financially, it doesn't sound like they're 50-50 because it sounds like he's making large expenses without consulting her and more than his share on these kinds of expenses. It's not even like fair and equitable money-wise, but he's also like dragging her down with all the chores and with everything that he causes to happen. Like, imagine thinking that 50-50 is worth cleaning up somebody's poo splatters from a toilet. No, it's not worth it. Okay. She even talks about this like psychological stress that she has because of his messiness and his inconsiderate attitude. Another woman said that even though she's dealing with the death of her mother, she doesn't want to go back home because when she goes back home, her life is going to be different and she's going to be cleaning up after somebody else. She says right there, I only have myself to clean up after, so I don't want to go back home. Another woman says not living with someone is the greatest luxury and gift I've ever given myself. A lot of these women are literally single moms who have just opted out of relationships. This woman says she's done with romantic relationships at this point, and she says that women have been indoctrinated with the idea that the absolute worst thing that could happen to them is living alone and like raising kids on their own. She's like, I live with cats and a kid, and I'm so much happier on my own than I ever was with a man. She's not even really on her own. She is still taken care of. She has dependents that she takes care of. So why is it easier for her alone? Because a man is just another dependent in most cases. Having a kid with a man does not in any way guarantee his participation in that child's life and well-being, in your life and your well-being. Is absolutely no guarantee to that. I literally have like a dozen more of these kinds of comments, but picking up on the theme, right? The pattern is a lot of men are literally just a dead weight on a woman's shoulders. Even if that woman has kids, even if that woman has other responsibilities, it doesn't matter, because what a lot of men do is just add extra burdens to your life. And you will still be expected to deal with the kids. Like, nobody is gonna like come and take your kids from you half the time just because their dad's a jackass. You will literally just have to like deal with that and live with it. Like, these are like these 50-50 men. These are the like, you have to go to work too men, and like you have to help me pay the bills. But they don't want to help with anything. And in fact, not only do they not want to help, they're actually fine with just like creating more work for you all the time. I would say, like, unless you really do want like a partner more than you want a kid, then you don't need a partner to have a kid. If you want a partner that will be worth having kids with, then you need to break up with this guy. You need to find a partner that you would want to give children to. Otherwise, your best bet is to do it on your own, or if you can't afford doing it on your own, there are like home sharing programs specifically for women. There's lots of, you know, less than conventional ways to have a child. Will bring you same experience and that same joy of like motherhood, raising a baby around your family, maybe finding women that are on a similar path to you in life, where they're like, I don't want to mess around with men anymore. I just want to be able to have a baby and like raise that baby. I don't necessarily like want a man to be around. Just make sure that you have it in writing that you're not going to be bringing men around when you are both vulnerable post-birth, when you have young infants. Like, please don't let men into that house. That's all I ask. Like, if you're going to do all the work anyway, you might as well get all the credit. If you feel like you do want and need a partner to have a kid with, then that partner should be someone different than your current boyfriend. I would say just give yourself a time limit that if I don't find myself a partner by this time, then I'm just gonna figure out an alternative way. Be upfront with the men that you're dating that you are wanting to have a kid soon. That'll scare most of them away. That's what you want. And it should scare them away if they don't want that. Set your boundaries, and if your conditions are not met, then leave and have a baby by yourself if that's important to you. If you're worried about market value or anything like that, it's gonna ruin your market value just as much to have a child with a long-term boyfriend who still wants you to pay 50-50 for bills. It's gonna ruin your market value in every way. Having a man around by your side does not improve your market value as a woman, especially if you have a kid with him. And having had kids actually makes you a lot more valuable to society. Your market value is actually increased because you have produced something. It's a lot more than most men can say for themselves. Increase your satisfaction in life, to not have your life and your success be controlled by the actions of a man who is only there because somebody else is paying half of the bills. That's what will decrease your market value in your own mind, because you'll be settling for so much less than what you really want. So the only way to actually increase your market value is to go out and get the thing that you want and not to settle. And I realize that all of this is easier said than done. In the final stages of the relationship, it becomes the hardest to really let go because of that familiarity that's been created, because of everything you've invested in the relationship. It's going to be hard, I'm not going to lie to you, but it's not going to be harder than having a baby with a man who doesn't care about you. Almost anything will be easier than that. That's straight from the mouths of women who have experienced. I'm sorry that you're in this situation. I really hope that you can free yourself of it and experience a life where you can truly invest in yourself and your future child. Godspeed. Absolutely not. I don't believe in 50-50 relationships. Things are only fair and equal in my relationship with my husband because both my husband and I understand us doing 50-50 would never make our relationship equal, especially never make our relationship fair, because I, as a woman, am not favored by the social structure that we exist in. And the structure that we live in is basically racist, classist, ableist, patriarchy. And intersectionally, he hits a lot less of those than I do. And intersectionally, other people are a lot worse off than me. But what wouldn't make our relationship fair and equitable is us ignoring that and going financially in 50-50. I personally don't give 50% in relationships. I would give 50% to a roommate, maybe an acquaintance. We'll see how that goes. But I don't even give my friends 50-50. Like, I'm an all-in girly. I don't do 50-50. And I don't think most women ever do 50-50 either. And the reason why it doesn't work is because the only people that can really do 50-50, especially financially, are men. That does not work for women. I don't believe that anybody that wants to give you 50% really wants to be in a relationship with you. I think you need to understand that first and foremost. If somebody is offering you 50% of anything, then that means they're not all in. They would be all in for the right person. They would be all in for the right opportunity every time. If they only want to go in 50%, that means they're withholding something. If we're going to do the whole marriage and relationship thing, I don't believe in 50-50 at all. I'm not bringing 50%. Marriage and partnership, especially romantic partnership, is a very unique lifetime investment. I think people really should start thinking of it more like that. Because of the way that our world and our institutions are structured, especially in America, you should never get married to someone who wants to go in 50-50 with you. That's a bad investment. that's a really bad investment, because unless you are giving your marriage 100%, and marriage is a bad investment for both of you, then you both might as well get a roommate. Even in the modern day, as women become providers and breadwinners, relationships are still skewed to the point where married women are losing hours more time versus single women. Less sleep, they're more stressed out, they're dying sooner. Whereas married men tack on more years to the end of their life. Married men make 11% more on average at work than single men, men who have never been married. And divorced men make 9% more. So it's still a huge net benefit for a man to be married. Whereas a married woman, or God forbid a mother, is going to be woefully underpaid, underutilized, underpromoted, most likely punished for being a mother in the workplace. Whereas men get raises when they become fathers and get raises when they get married. Where's the 50-50 in that? Like, are you going to sit down with a calculator and calculate that into it? And this is only without children involved. Whoever's the primary parent is putting in way more than 50-50, putting in way more than the person going into work. So this is without children. The only time that I could see 50-50 working is in a gay relationship where there's a man and a man, or there's a woman and a woman. Even there, they would still be affected differently by the levels of patriarchy and the levels of intersection. Say if it was a black man and a white man, or a black woman and a white woman, then you'd have to think about that. It's not all the same, because the patriarchy treats us all differently. If it treated us all the same, then we could talk about doing 50-50. But the patriarchy, unfortunately, distinguishes between men and women especially. But there's other factors that play into it. I don't view a relationship, especially a long-term romantic relationship, as worth it if each of you is only willing to put in 50-50 of anything. Like, if this is a person that you're going to be sharing a living space with, life insurance policies, this person's going to decide, if a plug is going to get pulled on you or not, you better be giving me 100%. And women very rarely give less than 100%. It's the men that often do. It's the men that often only give 10%. So 50% to them, they're viewing it as a step up, actually. Whereas women are often putting in 100% by default, and then men come into that space and start talking about 50-50. And now finances get brought into it, which is actually completely irrelevant to the conversation. If you're a woman, this is a really good thing for you to think about, because when you talk about 50-50, think money, yes, but also think above that. Think about, what is this man actually bringing to the table? And that will really help clear it up for you why you should never go 50-50. Okay, because there is no world in which you take off your panties and throw them on the floor for him to pick up, and he does it thanklessly and wordlessly, because he wants you to think that he's good husband material. And he does your laundry for you, and he comes over to your apartment and cleans it, and he cooks you dinner, and you get to decide what kind of dinner it is because you're the more picky one. If all that's happening for you, then somebody's going in 100% for you, and you should be doing the same. And hopefully you're aligning on these things where you can bring something to their life and they can bring something to your life. But 50-50 will never be it, because men only think of 50-50 in terms of money. They don't plan to reciprocate you 50% of your emotional support. They don't plan to reciprocate being waited on hand and foot while you're sick or incapacitated or something like that. They're not going to do that for you. They're not going to come over and nurse you back from a hangover the way you do that for them after they've been out with their boys. They would never put their reproductive health at risk for you the way that you do for them. They would think twice, and they would probably only get on birth control if it somehow helped them with some other health issue or gave them a certain peace of mind that they were really after. I want you guys to know, when I say this stuff, I'm never shaming birth control. And I think that anyone that wants to be on birth control should be on birth control and should have access to it. But frankly, a lot of women suffered negative side effects from getting on birth control for a man who wouldn't pick them up off the side of the road if it was out of their way a little bit. And many women ended up with long-term consequences, so that a man like that could put their reproductive health at risk, or had an IUD put in very painfully, had to get implants and hormones and all this kind of stuff that they maybe wouldn't have done if it wasn't for a man who didn't want to wear a condom. Men would never do that for you. If the tables were flipped tomorrow, they would change their tune immediately. All about reproductive health. There would be an abortion clinic at every gas station, as there would be all these campaigns about don't let these women get you pregnant. They would start singing our song real quick if the tables were turned. Trust me, men would not do half the shit for you that you think to do for them. And you need to stop doing that shit. When it comes to somebody who wants to go 50-50 with you, give them a real taste of what that's like. You know what that would look like for most women is showing up half-ass dressed, no makeup on, hair not done, no nails, no eyelashes, no lip gloss, unmoisturized, toenail missing, gut hanging out, and then pay half the check and practice abstinence. Because 50-50 means nobody is putting their reproductive health at risk. You have to stay abstinent. That's 50-50. What it would look like for most women. It would mean never doing a kind or thoughtful gesture because men do not return those. The only one that gets invested when you do these thoughtful, kind things is you. And that's what men bank on. They've gotten so audacious, in fact, that they now want to bring finances into this and they want to swindle you out of that too. So no, I absolutely do not believe in 50-50. I believe in 100-100. And I believe that if that man is not doing everything for you to succeed because he's aware that you are living in and fighting against a patriarchy, then that man does not even want good things for you. Honestly, my biggest hope and goal for this entire conversation is for women to be able to start using this 50-50 conversation as a tool that illuminates inequities rather than the way that the patriarchy is trying to use it, which is as a tool to sweep the inequities under a rug and maintain the status quo that we live in, where things are actively happening for everybody else at the expense of women. So that anytime you're even tempted to enter such an arrangement, you automatically start asking yourself, how is this person going to match my efforts and my contributions? Or you can start asking yourself, how can I use this situation to my advantage? Oftentimes, that's the question you won't be able to answer as a woman. There's nothing about a 50-50 relationship that advantages you as much as it does a man, because he cannot do his fair share of anything but the finances. And when it comes to the finances, they are hardly ever a fair share because of the way that women are punished just for being women. Earning as much, they're punished by being denied opportunities. And like, even if we were talking about a real 50-50 relationship, the reproductive health issue alone, childbearing alone, would already necessitate an uneven split on the man's part. If we were to calculate out these services like childbearing, like all this stuff, most men can't functionally repay women for that with money, which is why it gets left out of the 50-50 conversation. He can't repay you for the long-term effects of birth control. They're going to take place long after he's gone. Can't repay you for the emotional support that you provided him that he never returned. Can't repay you for that time you had to get an abortion because he wouldn't wear a condom. Can't repay you. All of those things can irreparably damage your body and can irreversibly change your future. Men don't actually want to have the 50-50 conversation. They just want to keep making your labor seem small, stupid, and invisible, and it's not. Because again, whenever they come to you with the 50-50 conversation, it only ever has to do with rent and bills. Who's going to pull out their card when it comes time to pay for dinner? Never, oh, let me go get a vasectomy so that you don't have to worry about getting an abortion. It's never, wow, you provide so much to me, you know, emotionally, and you provide safety for me. You're such a good communicator. Let me work on that so that I can bring that equally into our relationship. Or I'm so glad that we moved into your place because my place was a shithole. I've really been learning like how you do everything. I don't just expect you to keep up this standard of cleanliness. I'm raising my standard of cleanliness so that I can match you. It's always no, I'm gonna move in, kick my feet up, and take a big fat shit all over this lovely atmosphere that you've created. People jokingly sometimes call this boy air, but it really pisses me off. It's like, no, he just doesn't give a shit. Boy air or not, he can make the bed when he gets out of it. He just doesn't want to. He just doesn't think that is providing anything to him, even though he actively enjoys it. Even though a lot of men will get on TikTok and post about how nice women's places are and how, you know, it's such a fairy tale coming over to a woman's place. They'll say that, but yet when it comes to matching that energy, they don't. They just want to talk about who's going to pull out their card and swipe it at dinner. You don't care that you're coming home to an atmosphere that somebody worked to create. And so where's the 50-50 there? If you're really thinking practically about it, 50-50 will only ever illuminate how little men actually bring to your life. I could never, in good faith, recommend a 50-50 relationship to anyone because I would never, ever do that. All right, I hope that helps. Love you so much. Godspeed. All right, I may be wrong and backwards for this, but I do think that a man should understand that you're a prize to him in this society. I agree, like if we lived in a vacuum and if all things were equal to start with, I do think that nobody wants to be seen as like a prize, like as an object. So I want to be clear that that's not what I mean. I decided to just make a list of the things that men and women are expected to do in marriage and like what the roles kind of come pre-assigned as. And I really think that if a man is looking at this division of labor and expectations, he has to acknowledge that he is doing less to participate in the relationship than you are. If you are in a cis-het relationship with a man and a woman, the things that are expected from the woman vastly outsize the things that are expected from a man. A lot of these things are things that a man would not normally do for himself. So by default, his life improves when he partners with a woman because a woman is going to do these things. And when a man sort of takes on any of the stuff on this side, he gets bonus points for this. So either way, he's like benefiting. Look at how vastly you have to outwork a man in a marriage, like just to be considered a run-of-the-mill basic bitch kind of wife. First off, you both have to bear the load of just existence, right? It's till death do us part. You both presumably go to work for 40 hours a week. So then explain to me why on the chore side, that is absolutely expected of women. It's cooking every day, it's dishes every day, it's laundry every other day, it's sweeping, it's mopping, it's cleaning the bathrooms, it's vacuuming, wiping surfaces, and keeping things organized. That is the bare minimum that you as a woman day to day are expected to do. That's pretty crazy. That's a maid. Like, that's an entire job of a maid, especially if you are picking up after somebody else. So now it becomes less of like a survival skill that you need if you're going to be living on your own. And now it becomes a benefit to somebody else. A survival skill that you do for yourself now and for them. That's weird. Now, the things in the man's column, kind of the most frequent chore is like taking out the trash, which is probably every day or every other day. But everything else is weekly, monthly, quarterly, seasonally. And then there's like some basic things that you might expect a man to do for himself, like get a haircut and then maybe have a hobby, but you can't guarantee that it won't be extremely time consuming or expensive. And that's something you have to think about as a double income earner, as a woman too, is how much is he contributing to the household, because somebody has to remember to buy these supplies. Somebody has to remember to do all that mental load too. Meanwhile, he's only thinking about things every once in a while, most likely has to be nagged to do the trash and mow the lawn. Some men even have to be woken up to go to work, and some men even need a lunch maid in order to go to work, whereas women just get up, get ready, and go to work. Things like that are things for you to consider. This all already kind of makes you a prize. The fact that you will automatically be expected to do these things in a partnership and he's going to get bonus points for doing them, that already makes you a prize. And we're not even through. Like, we're on page 1. Here's page 2 of things that men and women are expected to do within marriage. Notice the man's list ended on page 1. And if you are not doing these things as a woman, somebody's going to ask you why. Somebody's going to be like, don't you care about your health? Shouldn't you work out? Shouldn't you, do you ever worry your husband's going to leave you for somebody else since you've gained so much weight? People don't ask that of men. People don't ask men to shave their body or do a bunch of beauty treatments or have a skincare routine or make sure that you or your wife have cute clothes. Like, that mostly falls on the women. Like, men will just wear the same shirt for like 20 years unless their wife keeps buying them like new shirts. And for some reason, men are not expected to do that on the other side. Like, I don't get to just dress like a slob and my husband just has to deal with it. Or he has to go shopping for me and like know my size and like know my taste and like know what I will and won't wear and make sure not to buy me something that I'm just going to stick in the back of my closet and forget about. Like, it's like dealing with a child. A man is probably not keeping track of his family's birthdays and buying gifts for them, for his nieces, nephews, for his like aunts and uncles. Like, God forbid your hair start going gray and you don't dye it or you don't somehow upkeep it so that it looks nice. Like, you're not just allowed to like just go bald or whatever. Men are not expected to do this either. They're not expected to manage their wife's calendar, her appointments, like make her gynecologist appointments, make her dentist appointments. Like, nobody's doing any of that, but a lot of wives do it for their husbands. Like, they'll call and make his doctor's appointment, they'll make his dentist appointment. Like, why? How is that not a prize or a benefit to a man? Let alone when we get to the childbearing part, because the men's list here is also very short as far as hard expectations. Societally, a man is not expected to know any information about his own baby. I find that really crazy. I find it really crazy that a man can literally show up to a doctor's appointment and the nurse starts asking questions. When was the baby born? I don't know. What are they allergic to? I don't know. When did they hit their last milestone? I don't know. How old are they? I don't know. What's their middle name? I don't know. If a woman showed up like that with her baby and said she doesn't know its age, its birth date, its allergies, or anything like that, somebody would call CPS. Whereas with the man, it's like, well, at least he tried. At least he brought them to the doctor's appointment. It makes me fucking sick. Let alone the whole pregnancy thing. Let alone that. What does a man have to do the whole time? Nothing. Nothing. He can do none of this. So how is this not a prize to him? And guess what? The baby gets his last name most of the time. That's insulting. That's fucking crazy. Like, if a man doesn't realize that this is a prize for him to be partnered up with a woman, that's not a world that I want to live in, and that's not a man that I want to be partnered with, because the expectation is going to be for me to do all these things. And frankly, a man is not going to want a woman who doesn't do all of these things. And for him to do anything that's in the woman's column is, again, it's going to be extra bonus brownie points. So to me, it's like, you are winning, so I'm a prize. You know what I mean? Because most women are losing. Most women are putting in outsized amounts of work in a marriage. So I guess that's kind of what I mean by prize. And thank you for calling me out. Thank you for giving me a chance to clarify and explain. I hope this kind of helps to clarify where I'm coming from.